has recognizable impairments with your judgment, memory, decision making. And so, which, by the way, that's 41% of adults in America. No, it's 41% of the entire population, actually. But so, now, is there crossover between each of these? Like, are some of the obese people also depressed and anxious? Yes, for sure, right? But really what we're looking at is potentially half of the U.S. population is exhibiting cognitive deficits. Yep. What is your thought about that, sir?
That's why we have Joe Biden and Donald Trump as our fucking candidates for president.
Okay, so that is why, but...
When I was living in Washington, D.C. in 1998, 99, 2000,
yeah.
The mayor was Marion Barry.
Yeah.
And he was mayor, and then he got arrested for smoking crack.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that, he got reelected. And everyone was like, what the fuck? How could it? And someone was like, well, that's democracy. If like the majority of people in D.C. smoke crack, they're going to elect a mayor who smokes crack. So if the majority of people in the U.S. are fucking like have severe cognitive impairment, that's why we have 2 presidents with severe cognitive impairment.
Dude.
Warning. This podcast is for entertainment only and not intended for medical purposes.
Because we're experts in global economics.
Yes. Yeah.
No, actually, one cool thing about when we start talking shit about all this shit we don't know about is usually we quickly get right back to psychology. So I don't think we're too bad at talking about things we don't know about.
Yeah, stay in the lane, right?
Okay, so the reason America is headed for bankruptcy, well, there's so many reasons, but for some reason I'm just going to focus on one. I think because it's a psychological reason. I think it's just because humans, we're animals. We're like primates.
Yeah.
And we just want, like we see a shiny new thing and we want it. And we kind of use Occam's razor, which is sort of like this. We just want a simple, shiny new thing. And then the whole system is just kind of designed, kind of like the election system is just sort of designed in 4-year cycles. And we just want like quick, immediate results. And so the presidents like borrow more money and print more dollars and try to like give us what we want in 2 or 3 years. And we vote for the dude that's going to like make us feel good quickly. And so we have our species, like primates, we don't really have long-range vision. We just have short-range vision. And short-range vision just slowly but surely digs you into a hole. And we're just digging ourselves deeper and deeper.
But I haven't heard many people actually determine, like, oh, we have 20 more years of fossil fuels. Or global warming will reach a critical tipping point at, 2050. Or population will somehow, or the amount of plastics in the environment will at what date?
Dude, well, you hear so many of those, but no one knows, and different experts disagree, and so we just have to wait and see. And there's economic decline, there's environmental decline, there's wars, there's like all kinds of shit that's going to catch up with us. And also humans, another different feature of human psychology is we like to be like catastrophizing and think the end of the world is coming in a few years. Like people have been predicting the end of the world forever. Remember Y2K, dude?
Yes.
Remember what a big deal Y2K was?
Yes.
And then there was another one, like the Mayan calendar said the universe would end in like 2012 or something.
Oh, how silly was that?
Yeah, so there's like constantly predictions. And so right now it's like, ooh, the end of times because like Trump and Biden are mentally fucked up or something.
Actually, we don't have to wait for the figures to drop because the current figures of cognitive decline in the U.S. will probably freak you out. Either it will be like, oh, no wonder why, or let me just run through some really quick, okay? Right? Like, the amount of people whose IQ is less than 70 is 2% of the population. Right? You might think, well, that's not very much. But if you go up to 83, which is still pretty low, but some people would say that's not really that low. It's only one Well, it's more than one standard deviation away from the average of 100. But that's 12% of the population, right? And so I'm not saying, because 83 is not actually recognized as a disability, but you do show some cognitive deficits compared to someone who's at 100. Now, at 70, it's a full-on disability. So 2% of the population. Now, let's just quickly add this all together, because depression, currently, it's 8.4% of adults in America have severe depression, right? Anxiety is 19 to 20%, an actual diagnosed anxiety disorder. And as I said, dementia is 1.5. Obesity.
Oh, shit.
Sorry, dude. Obesity is linked with cognitive deficits. And this is something this is not controversial. It's just a fact, right? Like obesity actually screws with your vascular health. It causes sleep disorders and creates inflammation in your brain that literally, depression is up from 7% to 8.4%. And I'm like, that's nothing compared to inflation. Like, what? I mean, okay. No, 8.4. It's like, okay. And that is somewhat like inflation. But anxiety is up from 18% to 19 or 20, right? So it's moving by 1 to 1.5% every decade, right? And maybe that will somehow exponentially increase with compounding factors, potentially, or no, that's just the rate it's increasing. It's not really as fast as people think. It's like, oh, we're in a fucking crisis. It's like getting us like the plague. Is my reaction wrong? Is 8% just an impossibly huge number, and I'm just used to it? Because
I don't. My opinion is that there's a huge percent of Americans who are, their mental health state is not that good, and I think like to fucking shocking levels. So no, I think you're right. I think it is fucking shocking. If we add again, there's probably overlap, but if we add the depression and the anxiety and we're getting close to 30%, that's fucking crazy.
Okay, right. That's 30%. And then, and really, I didn't look at all of the examples of what's causing cognitive impairment, right? Like, I didn't even cover the neurodivergent community, right? Like that, like all the autism and like, because those numbers are increasing at rates that it's incomprehensible. No one can make sense of that, right? I left those out just because it's like, fuck that makes it confusing. But obviously, then the number skews to higher than 50%. But literally, look at this very quick estimate, and we're suddenly looking at, and it's impossible to understand how impaired compared to the healthy. Like, if you're running a study, right, like, which is what psychologists do, is we take an experimental group, and then you have this so-called healthy comparison group, right? I don't know who that is anymore, but it's
it's impossible to find a healthy control group.
Dude, that was like when they tried to figure out, when they asked college kids about like who doesn't masturbate. They were trying to figure out like, hey, what's the effects of porn, right? It was like, what are the effects of porn on this population? And they couldn't find anyone who had not viewed porn. None. Like, literally, they couldn't find a control group, right?
Right.
So it's like how funny. I mean, that's funny because it's porn, right? But then when you shift over to this concept where we're like, okay, this level of impairment has led us to now the people who are running our country are completely impaired. But it's not like look at the rest of the world and who's running all the other countries. Like, now, obviously, all the information I've had is from an America-centric view. So Putin is fucking crazy. For whatever reasons, everyone says he's crazy. The head of China is his own form of of crazy.
Yeah,
And
that dude's fucked up.
like, dude, whoever's running England.
Boris Johnson, is that his name? What a fucking idiot.
Boris Johnson. Like, it's just become, it's not only an American issue, right? It's actually kind of hard to find a country run by anyone where like, oh, sweet, I like the way this thing's going. Like the dude running the Philippines is just like everyone's dead because of your crimes. And then the guy in Nicaragua is like, dude, we'll make the biggest prisons in the world, shave everyone's head. You all have to live in, like, whatever. Like, we aren't the only weird ones. But let's get back on topic. What's your idea of how a psyche and a citizen can exist in a world like this?
I'll give an optimistic view. I don't know if I'm optimistic, but let me just give an optimistic view because, that makes everyone feel good.
Yeah.
Is that I think that it wasn't that long, historically speaking, maybe 10,000 years ago, where humans were kind of clans of warring tribes, and we would just kind of like, if we saw another tribe and we thought we could take them, we would just go kill all their men and take all their women as sex slaves. And that just was like kind of how civilization went down for like a few 100,000 years. Like that's mostly what we humans have been doing for the past 400,000 years. This new thing where we try to like not just, if you see a hot chick, you don't just kill the husband and take her and rape her.
Yeah.
That's a weird new thing. So, it's sort of like we're historically we're more like warring primate fucking beasts. And so the fact that we're here today is kind of a miracle of how smart we are. So that half of us are stupid and half of us are okay is like, I don't know, maybe we're doing pretty good. And maybe the arrow is headed towards positive evolution. And so maybe we'll figure out how to like deal with this shit.
And everyone just points to like, look at how depressed these billionaires are, right? Like all the money in the world doesn't actually help them. And I'm like, bullshit. Right? I'm going to just call bullshit on this right now that, like, the majority of these issues that I'm talking about, all the way to dementia, obesity, depression, and anxiety, massively skewed towards people in poverty.
Totally.
Okay? Like, so, do not try to pretend that this is, like, equally distributed through classes. Right? Because, of course, people will say, like, oh, yeah, those who are in therapy are these kind of like neurotic middle upper class people. That's who goes to therapy. And I'm like, sure. Right. Fine. Okay. Some people can afford it. They think about it. They go and they get it. Right. But, I'm not even talking about those people. I want to talk about like, okay, if there is this massive weight and now I have to talk about Wilber's idea of consciousness evolving into this tipping point. So it's going to be like two opposing forces, right? Wilber, just to refresh anyone who cares, had this idea that over time, people were going to increasingly evolve in their own level of consciousness, with society as a form of consciousness, to a place where there was a universal perspective where all humans were considered as equal humans, and we thought and we compared ourselves to others, and like someone in universal state of consciousness would think of Chinese people as similar to themselves. They would think of Arab people similar to themselves, and they would feel the inequality, and then they would do everything they can to embrace all human beings as their brothers.
Yep.
This was the idea, and
some arguments can be made, and it's kind of what I said 5 minutes ago, that if we zoom way out, that there's been a lot of movement in that direction.
Definitely, right? But also, what Wilber could not have anticipated, and I guarantee if he was listening to this, he would be like, "Well, you haven't read my book in 1971 when I mentioned that for sure all society would fall off a cliff." And I'm like, dude. That was his game all the time. he would always just make reference to some shit he said somewhere. But actually, there's no way he could have anticipated that half of our population would end up in some type of a difficulty with making judgments, memory, and like impaired decision making, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and so, what's your sense? What do you think is where are we headed? Or
well, so I think where we've arrived is at a place where there are two tipping points. There is one headed towards universal consciousness, and this is my entire thesis right here, is there's a movement towards universal consciousness, but the mass of the population is cognitively impaired. And so then what we have produced essentially is woke agendas, DEI failures, one after the next, and it's quite easy to rattle this off because we have up high the ideal, but then those trying to implement it are fucked up. Are you tracking me?
Yep.
Right. So we have this ideal of universal consciousness, and so then we have the idea of Black Lives Matters or body positivity, and like on go these ideas that in essence have a terrific idea of being inclusive and helping those that are unfortunate and have struggled to play the game, right?
Yeah.
But then when it comes time to implement it, the strategies designed by people who are
Idiots.
they're idiots, and or even if they did come up with a fantastic strategy, those who come to implement it are idiots. Like,
yeah.
and just by statistical probability, those who have arrived are not in good form. Like, and I am I allowed to say this? Like, what? Why do I feel?
Yeah.
Why do I feel?
I mean,
why do I feel like
there definitely people would be very angry at what you're saying, but whatever. You just got to speak your thoughts, and we got to come to the truth with enough critical thinking.
But